Computer. So, hello. I am sitting here with my new friend, Ray Scott. Ray and I have been going back and forth in conversation, real time, Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm honored that he agreed to sit with me today. Sitting in with Ray Scott to me is an amazing honor. Ray is, I'm going to read the words of Earl Monroe. Earl wrote the foreword to Ray's book, which I'm going to promote here shamelessly, and I will later too. But Earl wrote that, first of all, when I first saw Earl Monroe play as a young man growing up in Philadelphia, I knew the world of basketball had changed. And certainly for the better. I have nothing but admiration for Earl, the way Earl approached the game, the way he was a great teammate, and so forth and so on. Prior to John Bartram High in Philadelphia, and when Ray's book came out, I noticed that Earl had written I guess it's called not the foreword, but the intro. I'm not sure the difference, but it's a long foreword. But I'm going to read to everybody what Earl wrote. Then I'm going to let Ray talk. Ray Scott may be a modest person, but he's had a big life. He's known other great athletes such as Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, and he gives us a ringside seat. Ray was part of the action as a team rep when the owners certified the NBA Players Union in 1964. He was also right there in 1970 when the historic Oscar Robertson suit was filed. It wasn't entirely settled until 1976, but as a result, and ever since then, players have had the right to declare free agency. Throughout the book, Ray dishes out some inside information, but never deviates from his honorable purpose, which is not to shock, but to make the readers think about NBA basketball and the progress the league has made in sensitive issues of race in America. Ray is neither an NBA apologist nor an NBA critic. He just tells it like it is, like it and saw it. He just tells it like he saw it, which is exactly the way it was and is. Earl, my apologies to you for botching those words when I read it. When I first read this book, I couldn't give it to enough people. It's a historical retrospective of a game that I love, and Ray, like I said, so graciously has agreed to share some time with me. So I'm just going to say, Ray, talk to me. Tell me where you want to start.
Well, and we should start with Earl, because Earl, as you pointed out, brought so much to the table of the game we love. He brought a lot to the table of the game that we wanted people to love and see and appreciate. And he's a South Philly kid. I'm a South Philly kid, so I'm very, very partial to Earl, because Earl personified guys from our neighborhood, like a guy named Puny Bill Murray. He personifies the game of a guy like Bozo Walker, who played with the famous Harlem Comedy Kids. Earl had a sincerity about the game, and in that he loved it, and he loved to play the game for enjoyment as well as achievement. And I think sometimes those things get confused. But the guy that tied it all together for Earl to give him more possessions and a better floor perspective was a 6'7" guy by the name of Wes Unseld. So when Wesley came to the Baltimore Bullets along with Earl, we were viewed as a future power. And Coach Gene Shue began to build that. But Earl was always the cornerstone. Earl was always, as great as Wes is and was,
sure,
Earl was the cornerstone. And to have spent time watching this kid that was growing up behind me evolve into such a major player.
Yeah.
And then saying, I can change the game I play.
He did.
And play the austere game that the New York Knicks play. A lot of people didn't think, they saw Earl as a failure, when actually Earl became a champion. It was the exact opposite. So
That might be my favorite team of all time, by the way, but keep going.
Easily. Well, it could easily be because you were not born during the era of Cousy and Sharman and Cousy and Sam Jones.
Yep.
And Sat Sanders, Bill Russell, and Tommy Heinsohn. But my favorite team of all time are our Philly guys. The 67, 66 Philly Warriors.
I was at Convention Hall the night they beat Boston.
That's my favorite team because Wilt measured how he was contributing, and he believed in Alex Hannum's system, and he changed, and they became a force. That might have been the greatest group of ball players I ever witnessed.
It was, again, I was a young kid. I was a senior in high school, and back then you could get into Convention Hall for a game 7 or whatever it was, and whenever they beat Boston. And one of the reasons I hated those Heinsohn teams is because I was a Philly guy. I didn't want Boston to win. In retrospect, I got smarter. But anyway, that was, Wally Jones, of course, and Hal Greer, and it is an amazing Chet Walker and so forth and so on. So I think we could talk basketball forever. Like I said, the book to me is such you take this game that we love and so many of us love, and you used it to teach history and certainly your ethos and your personality and your wisdom is just, I'm not trying to be patronizing at all. It's one of the reasons I'm so honored to do this, but the book is, anybody who doesn't read it doesn't really want to learn or know, the history, from a guy who, your accolades and your accomplishments are amazing. First African-American coach of the year in the NBA, big time scorer, big time player. I have to tell you, this morning I was exercising and the song "Dancing in the Streets" came on, and I thought, oh my God, this is like meant to be bashert, as we say in Yiddish, because in that song is Philadelphia, Baltimore, DC, and don't forget the Motor City. So that song was written for you. It just came on this morning. It was kind of crazy, but
she's Arthur Reeves.
Oh,
very close friend. She's a friend.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Oh my God. She sang my favorite love song of all time, "Love Makes You Do Foolish Things."
Yes.
So several questions are basic to my story. I'm reading from your book. How did I, a kid from a low rent, 3rd floor walk-up apartment in South Philly, who started playing basketball when I was 10, go from where I've been to get to where I am? How and why did I manage to survive the usual racial obstacles that hindered and often destroyed the careers and lives of so many Black men, including basketball players who I believe were more talented than I ever was? Some of these questions are relatively easy for me to answer. Some I'm still trying to figure out. And I'm going to stop there. Again, this is the kind of the premise of the book, but you wrote those words. So you asked the question, and in this book, you've done your level best to answer it in so many ways. But I wrote a couple things down. You wrote something, and God laughed. You wrote a date that sticks out in your mind, March 27th, 1961. You were sitting on a subway. We didn't have cell phones and internet those, but all part of your journey. Why did God laugh? What happened on March 27th, 1961? I just want to try to fuel your fire and let you talk. So run from there, if you will, sir.
Well, it's an incredible story. That the story for that draft in 61 begins in 1957.
Sure. Perfect.
I'm home for Christmas. I'm flying back to Portland, Oregon, my university, Catholic school on the West Coast.
Yep.
I get to the airport in Philadelphia. I get on a plane, and lo and behold, who am I sitting next to? Herb Adderley. one of our all-time greats from Philadelphia,
Northeast High.
Northeast High, probably one of the greatest athletes to come from Philadelphia. And we're flying back to, I'm flying back to Oregon. He's going back to Michigan. The plane has a stop in Detroit. When the plane stops in Detroit, and I look out of the window as Herb gets out of the plane, and Herb is going into the terminal. Now, remember, in those days in 57, when you got out of a plane, you got out into whatever the weather was. There was no walkway.
You're on the tarmac.
There was no, yes, you got on a terminal. So Herb is going in from the tarmac, and the wind is blowing, and snow is up to his waist.
Yep.
And I said to myself, boy, I'd never come here. I wasn't thinking about being a pro. I was just thinking about coming to Michigan. And Herb runs in, and his coat's flapping in the breeze and everything. And he goes up, and he's having this All-American year at Michigan State. And he's one of the great players in the land. So Herb goes on to become one of the great players with the Green Bay Packers.
Absolutely.
Because he couldn't run the football. Because they had Paul Hornig, and they had Jim Taylor, and they had Elijah Pitts.
Yep.
And so the coach said to Herb, what can we do? He says, Herb, you think you can play cornerback? And Herb said, yes. And he's now the #1 cornerback of all time.
Amazing. Herb
gets off. That's Herb's story. I fly back to Oregon. And lo and behold, that town that I said I would never come to. In 1961, when my name came up on the draft, after Larry Siegfried and after Tom Stith from St. Bonnie's, they said Ray Scott, and Ray Scott is picked by the Detroit Pistons. And I'm on the subway as I read this, going to the Bronx to play a basketball game, and I let out a scream. And, the subways in New York, but then when I let out a scream, everybody was looking to see who screamed. And so being a kid from South Philly, I knew my way around. So I began to look around too, like, who could have screamed like that? Yeah, I guess the old South Philly subway move. But there I was at 22, a #1 draft pick of the Detroit Pistons, with Earl Lloyd living up to the word that he had given me as a chief scout for the Detroit Pistons.
Yep.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
And you played in Detroit, and God laughed because you said, I ain't ever going to come here.
Yes, I'm not coming. God bless. And boy, do I have some. And not only that, you're going to have a decent career. You're never going to make an all-star team. And I hate to disappoint you. You're never going to make an all-star team. But you're going to come back as a coach, and I'm going to make you coach of the year. And that was not something I never even knew coaching was in my future.
Right.
I never even thought about it. But then, so that begins a new series of adventures, because now you're dealing with players from a different perspective. They're not your buddies in the locker room any longer. You're now managing, because I say baseball got it right. Baseball calls a manager a manager.
Yep.
Because that's what he does. He manages the game. Basketball, particularly professional basketball, calls a manager a coach.
Yeah.
When technically, if you look at it, they got 15 coaches now.
Yeah.
That head coach is the manager.
Yep.
He's managing minutes. He's managing staff. He's managing the game. So I believe, and I think that title will ultimately change. That is a general manager, but there is not the head coach, but the manager. And that's what I learned to do. I learned to manage the team.
How hard was that?
Quite difficult, because you have to come up with a philosophy. And I had to develop a philosophy but I had good people. I had Dave Bing, I had Chris Ford, I had Curtis Rowe, I acquired Don Adams, I acquired John Mingel, and I had Bob Lanier. So I had a lot of ingredients that go into making and helping yourself become a good manager. And it worked for a while, but I never could get the philosophy out of the head of my players that you play to make money, not play to win championships. Right. I wanted them to see the game as they played to win championships, and then they made money.
Yeah.
And if that's why the Celtics won so many isolated championships. The Celtics played to win. Russell, they believed they played to win championships. Think about that team if they tried to get paid. They couldn't have kept all those players.
Yeah.
But they kept them because they had the philosophy that we're in this to win a championship. And I tried to bring that to the Pistons, but it never quite slid in the home plate.
You know, I think over time, you know, all these years later, right? I think that's still the issue. I think that's why there's so few winning organizations. You know, obviously the Spurs had it figured out for a while. You know, more recently the Warriors here. You know, with all due respect, I don't think the Sixers had figured it out very well for many years. And not casting stones, but I'm actually also saying to you, I just think, you know, culture is hard. Culture starts at the top, right? I mean, you know, look, I was in executive search for many years. I helped companies build teams. Right. I would always say, if you got a bad boss, you got a bad job. So it's not just one person; it's leadership, you know, from the very beginning. But I do imagine it's hard. And honestly, back in when you were talking about it, you know, you talked about the money you earned, and it was more than you ever saw, and you got big raises and all this stuff, but it still wasn't life-changing money, you know, where you're going to be rich forever. I mean, it might be a better lifestyle, but not, you know, later in your life you sold insurance, and it's not like the NBA made you a hyper wealthy man, and you know, and so forth. So even though it was money, you know, it was hard. That's why the Celtics were so amazing, in my opinion, because they built a culture. And I don't think we've seen cultures like, I mean, Ray, you know more than I, but how many of those cultures have we seen since that Knick team that I referred to? They had it for a short period of time, haven't had it since. You know,
I think they built the draft in order to combat that. I just thought the Celtics just put something together for a 9-team league. I think they put something together. They were never ever distracted, or there wasn't a detraction of those players that they got. Because I mean, how many players like Sam Jones do you think you would keep like 11 years? How many players like John Havlicek do you think you'd keep 10 or 11 years? How many players like Russell, 10 or 11? That's not the way of the world in today's game. Yep. And so when you see the Warriors, as great as the Warriors are, they still have detraction.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. Excuse me, I'm listening.
And so when you have that detraction in today's game, it's going to change what you're attempting to do, because you have to adjust your philosophy to the people that you bring in. You can't say, this is our philosophy and we only do it this way. That's a recipe for disaster. So you have to try to have flexibility. But in my own situation, and I can go from there,
sure,
because I lived it, we got attraction where we brought in players, but then we had detraction of losing players. And my route was, it was thin enough that when I got a Kevin Porter from the Washington Bullets or the Wizards for Dave Bing, Kevin Porter had us in first place. And I love Dave Bing, but Kevin Porter had us in first place. And when he went down with an injury, neat for the whole year,
yeah,
we sunk out into the oblivion and I was fired. So, you know, the NBA, you know, it's like the pretty girl you see at 1 o'clock in the morning. She ain't going to be sitting there at 2 o'clock in the morning.
it's true. I mean, just it's probably hard to. Oh, I just have to say one more thing about it from the coaching perspective, because I had something come up in my own memory feed this morning when I was. This is about you, but it reminded me again of what I read. So when in 2013 I got to coach a national team in Israel and we won a silver medal, and I was one of the first coaches in that whole organization to win silver. Everybody else won gold. So I stood out by my quote unquote lack of success, whatever it was. But and it just came up today, but it reminded me of a story in the book about Nate Thurman and your Nate Thurman story, where you prepped for a game and against the Bulls. So
Clifford Ray.
Pardon me? Oh, Cliff Ray. I'm sorry. Right. But they remind me of each other because they both played here. Right? They both played here.
Yes, but Clifford Ray was traded for Nate Thurman. That's where the Nate Thurman analogy comes in.
Right, okay, so I'm not far off. I just got my name wrong, but okay. So tell the story, please.
But it was a learning experience as a young coach.
Sure.
We're going along. We won the same amount of games as the Chicago Bulls, and so we're the underdog. And we get into preparation, and as I'm preparing, I'm looking at how do I control Chet Walker, and how do we control Butterbean Love, and Sloan and Van Leer are defensive guys, and we know how to kind of run them off of screens and utilize different things that we wanted to accomplish. And I never really thought about Clifford Ray because Clifford Ray had never been a difference maker.
Yep.
And so I'm not preparing for Clifford Ray. And we're in the 7th game of the playoffs, 3-3 tied in Chicago. Our bags are all packed to win this game and go on to Milwaukee and begin our series with the Milwaukee Bucks. So we come into this game, tight game, basket for basket, and I begin to notice they're playing through Clifford Ray. And the guy looks like he's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's shooting sky hooks. He's shooting finger rolls. He's banking the ball off the backboard. He's blocking shots. He's grabbing rebounds. I'm like, wait a minute.
Who are you?
Who is this guy? And he literally won that game for them because we couldn't account for him. You know, were we going to double team him? We weren't prepared to double team him. I didn't want to leave Chet. I didn't want to leave Butterbean on the floor. And then they had Bobby Weiss and they had Stu Edelman. Good team.
Oh, yeah.
Good. So we lose the game by 1 point. And I never forgot that I said, we were not prepared for Clifford Ray. I'll never do that. I'll have to be prepared for that unknown quantity in the NBA because there's always the unknown. There's a guy at a bench or some guy that's in a starting lineup that you're thinking of who doesn't do much, but he does just enough.
Just enough. That didn't cost you your job, though, correct?
No, what cost me my job was Mr. Zollner sold the team to a new owner.
Gotcha.
And you, how many new owners do you know that take over a team and they inherit the coach and that's their coach? Right. It doesn't happen that much.
Yeah, very few, obviously. From a personal or professional perspective? I mean, again, this is such a bad question for me to ask, but we have such a finite amount of time here. again, we probably, I don't know how many hours we could sit here. So in the book, and again, I'm going to encourage everybody to read it. Your journey from South Philadelphia through not making varsity at Southern, yeah, or it wasn't Southern at the time, it was South Philadelphia, whatever it was called. Yeah, to going to West Philly, becoming a leading scorer, and losing to Wilt, playing against Wilt in his senior year, and all this sort of stuff. Then going Eastern League, Portland, you didn't want to fly. I mean, the stories are so robust. You talked about Kutchers, which of course perked my ears up. I mean, there's so much to perk them up, but
my experience in Kutchers
talk about it.
It's almost Olympian, because
tell us what it was, first of all. Tell us what Kutchers was.
Country club that existed with other great country clubs that had great entertainment. I'm talking Steve and Edie, Charo. You think of great New York acts on Ed Sullivan, then think of the Borscht Belt. And the Borscht Belt was Grossinger's and Brown's, and it was, and even they had one area.
Neville, maybe.
I'm sorry.
Neville, maybe.
Neville, yes. Okay. And all had basketball teams.
Yeah.
So they would have the guys from the different around the country, all Americans from around the country, come and represent their areas, their resorts.
Yeah.
And Milton and Helen Kutcher had me after Wilt, and other great players. Players that I was drafted into the NBA with. Al Butler was drafted by the Knicks. But Lee Schaffer from North Carolina was drafted by by Syracuse Nationals at the time.
Yep.
So I knew the players as we moved up as a group. But Kutchers for me, more than basketball, because all it did with basketball was introduce me to great professionals and great college players. That was basketball. The big part of it was my coach was Red Auerbach. He took a personal interest in me. And Red taught me a lot. And I learned Jewish culture. And that was, for a kid from South Philly, the Jewish culture was so, I want to say, my word would be friendly to me and to where I was as a young kid of 18.
Yep.
And like any place that you go, generally when it has a great influence upon you, somewhere in that scenario is music.
Mm.
And the great thing about the Jewish culture at that time was their music. And they practiced two areas and loved two areas of music. They loved big band,
yep,
late 50s, Pops Whiteman. They loved Count Basie, Duke Ellington. They loved big band.
Yes, sir.
In that culture, those hotels. And they loved Latin American music, which exposes you to what? Another culture.
Yep.
So now I'm enmeshed in this culture of Latin American music, learning Yiddish, learning Spanish, listening to music of Tito Puente and the Machito and the great Rodriguez and these leaders, Pete Terrace. His hit of Shangri-La is a hit even today.
Mm.
And put an 18-year-old kid in this environment, walking around with these musicians for lunch. We all ate lunch together.
Yep.
because we had our own private area for lunch. Mr. Kutcher had built a private area for us for lunch and dinner, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we're in there as musicians, as bellhops, as waiters, as busboys, as waitresses. There's this whole culture. And I was exposed to that. So it meant some of everything to me. And I liked being friends with people that had such warm remembrances of Wilt, because Wilt had been there. And everybody talked about this guy, Wilt Chamberlain, and I went like, he's my buddy from Philadelphia. He's a good guy. He's a good man. I enjoy him. But that lifestyle that we were given at Kutcher's was, I think, such a promotionary place for growth into society. That's how I.
No,
and I want to say, Barry, I feel that those relationships, those stories, and the people serve me well even until today.
You just took my next question, and so I don't need to ask it. I mean, you took it, and you optimized it for what it was and what it brought to your life and how it enriched your life, and all way, music, food. I laughed about your matzo ball soup story. I told you that offline, but the rest of it, is amazing. And again, I just think, when did all that change?
It hasn't changed. It's like cultures. If cultures do what they're supposed to do, in my opinion,
yes,
the cultures should grow better. Our cultures, if we look at our cultures in some areas as we do today, and it's not growing, we have a problem.
Yep.
Because cultures are supposed to grow up, not down. They're not supposed to go back to the Stone Ages and out of the Stone Ages. So I talk about it all the time with respect to my book. My book is a view not only of where we were. My book is a view, in my opinion, Barry, of where we can go. That's why we're friends now. We're friends because I extended my hand to you.
Yes, sir.
Took my hand as a friend. We're now friends. Both of our cultures benefit from that.
Yep.
Both of our cultures benefit from that because we did what? We've now grown.
Yep.
We didn't go backwards. I don't want anything to do with that guy. Oh, that guy's a craphead. I don't want anything to do. That's not growth.
Right.
The growth is, as we talk to each other, we said, my goodness, look how similar we are. Think about that. This is in the course of the period that we've known each other on Facebook.
Yep. Yes, sir.
We've gone, look how similar we are. Look at how we address issues. See, that's to me what it's all about. And it's in the last chapter of my book. I'm going to reach out. I'm coming at you with an open hand. What you give me, that's a telling story, because my hand is open, because that's the America that I want to exist in. I don't want to live in America that's going back to the Dark Ages and going back to Reconstruction and going back to Spanish Inquisition. That's not the world I want to live
in. I'm so with you. I'm a little emotional, honestly, because we talked about this the other day on the phone. We both have grandkids, and I mean, none of us know what tomorrow is, of course, but there's X amount of time, and what's the hope for the future? What's the growth plan for the future? How do we get this ethos that has brought us together again, for which I'm so grateful on so many levels? But what kind of messaging, what kind of vehicles can we use to bring this obviously profound, accurate, win-win vision that you're talking about? What do we do?
Okay.
Coach me, coach.
Yeah, as an 85-year-old, let me say to you, when you ask that question,
Yes, sir.
it's up to us. You keep being a good guy.
Yeah, I
You
get that.
being the guy you are. That's all you can do. You see, God only gave us.
Yep.
So if you see the world as you do, and you want to improve upon it and use your words and your thoughts to communicate to people about how you see the world being better. And when you say that, knowing you in your philosophy, you say, and if there's a way you can help me be better, help me be better. Bring that to the table.
Sure.
Well, don't change that. We can't change that. See, that what people hope we do, the people that don't like us and don't want us to move ahead, they hope we give up.
Yep.
I ain't giving up. You're not giving up. We're proving today to your audience, we're not. Here's two guys. There's two guys. We just got together.
That's right.
And we're literally best friends. We're literally best friends.
I got goosebumps on my arm.
So I want the people looking in and say, if that what a good way to live. Look at those guys got it. Because we're not perfect guys. We didn't get here by being perfect guys. We got here because all we wanted was something better. And we want to be better people.
Yep.
Help me be a better people. Shake my hand. Come and be my friend. Help me be better. You can do that. But you can't help me be better if you're calling me names, if you're stomping on my character, if you're blotting out my vision, if you're not listening to me. You can't be better. So I think, my friend, I think we're onto something, and I think you and I today are proving to people how you can be better. I didn't say perfect. I said better.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
I didn't say perfect. I said better.
Who needs perfect? It's too much of a burden.
Well, you're not going to get it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. My dad used to say, "Rest in peace." He said, you wouldn't want to be perfect and whatever, but improvement, of course. And no, look, I love it. I'm so honored, and I have pages of notes, and I could go on and on, but I think what you just said is a great way for us to set up the end of this chapter, and maybe we'll do another chapter. But for this, I accomplished. When I say I accomplished because of you, what I had hoped to get from this was to hear your win-win philosophy. That's really, I wrote this on a piece of paper, and that's really what I hope the outcome of this would be. And so you shared it, win-win. You help me be better. I help you be better. We help everybody else be better. And what could be better? So I'm deeply I'm grateful. I don't want to say I'm in your debt. I am, but I'm grateful.
You're not. You're
No,
not.
I know. I knew that wouldn't fly.
You can't be in debt when you give to each other equally.
I get it.
You bring me to you as an equal. I bring you, my brother, to me as an equal.
No, it's the middle child in me. But
that's my West Philly background.
I get it. No,
Yes.
And I'm just forever grateful. Thank you so much for your time. Don't be embarrassed, Coach, when I talk about this offline or on Facebook, but
I will be happy.
I mean, I'm going to tell my friends, if you don't buy this book, tell me, I'll buy it for you. That's how far, because I want people to read it. Go ahead.
Well,
I'm sorry.
It's a tribute to my family. Yesterday, I got one of the greatest compliments I've ever had. You'll love this. One of the greatest compliments I ever had. My 5-year-old grandson brought me a book, the memoirs, what you just had in your hand. He brought me that book and he said, "Pop, I want you to inscribe this for me."
Shut up. Oh my God. A 5-year-old.
A 5-year-old. He said, "Pop, I want you to inscribe this for me, and my mommy's going to put it in her purse and take it home." 5-year-old. That's what it's for. That's what it's for.
No, yeah.
I'm not looking for a narrative to tell stories of the NBA. You know, I'm looking for a way to communicate with people how we live on this planet. I'm one of those guys. And I'm sharing that with you folks from the perspective of being fortunate enough to become an NBA player of basketball.
Yep.
But I'm sitting in that seat with a little money in my pocket. I'm able to now buy a hamburger. I'm not a poor kid. I'm not, and I don't want to transcribe it that way. I'm not a poor kid.
Yep.
I'm sitting in a locker room with other athletes, world-class athletes, watching the world. I'm watching J.F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, H. Rap Brown. I'm watching people grow up in this world exploding around me. And at that time in the 60s, and you well know this because you're a child of the 60s, what were we doing? We were growing closer together.
We were.
Walls were coming down. We were growing close. We were ending a war. Then we get into the 70s, the beautiful 70s with all this music and always talk about music, all this music and clothes. And in 1980, everything ends. Everything ends. We got to get that back, in my opinion.
Yeah, no.
And that's the question you asked me today. How do we get that back? We get it back by being ourselves, being good people. Because I believe there's more of us than them.
We just had to be out there and visible with it. And of course, this is some of that, right? This reach out. Again, just for anybody, I'll write about this, but Ray and I never met. We talked for the first time in life 3 days ago. Right. 2 days ago, ever. We went back and forth in social media, but in the best of ways. After I read his book, I said, I have to meet this gentleman.
You've always been my friend through social media.
Yeah.
Our relationship goes back to Facebook.
That's true.
It goes back to you liking different things, us communicating about different things. That's all part of it.
Yep.
You're no stranger to me.
No.
I know what your philosophy is, what your basic philosophy. You've shared that with me.
Yeah.
So this is just more icing on the cake.
Yeah, one more level, of it all and so forth. Coach, I cannot begin to thank you enough for spending time with me, my new friend. I don't know what to say. I'm rarely at a loss for words, but I am now. So I'm gonna give you a hug and say thank you very, very much. And I look forward to a real hug one of these days. But please stay safe. Thank you very, very much for taking the time, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, my brother. Be well.
Bye. Bye-bye.